talking a lot about planning. How are you doing with retirement planning and thinking about the various ways that you're planning to live your dream life post-retirement, post your business? What's going on with the planning for your business and your life in terms of your future? We're going to get into that today. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You show with me, Michelle Perkins. I'm your host. I have a fantastic guest today, and I'm super excited to get into the topic of planning. Again, I've been a little obsessed with planning in different areas of your life and money and work. And today we're going to talk about some big future ideas and how you can plan for them. It's very, very important, especially if you're an entrepreneur. We have some great tips for you today. I'm going to introduce my guest. Her name is Alicia Chandler. She's president of Indianapolis-based Oak Street Funding, a first financial bank company. Alicia joined Oak Street Funding in 2011, serving as Chief Legal Counsel until her promotion to president in July 2022. During her tenure with Oak Street Funding, she has leveraged her strong understanding of commercial financing to enable a client-focused business approach and customized loan solutions for all of Oak Street's targeted verticals. Prior to joining Oak Street Funding, she was a partner with Krieg DeVault LLP. Alicia holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Cincinnati and a law degree from the University of Cincinnati's College of Law. Alicia and her family live in Carmel, Indiana, where they enjoy spending time with their 4 dogs, with friends, and hanging out by the pool and riding bikes. That sounds great. Welcome, Alicia.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. There's so much we can talk about. And I love the fact that when you and I spoke, you had some really big ideas that people would benefit so much from thinking about. So I wanted to kind of dive into that. And why don't you give us a little background first in terms of what you do and how you got to where you are?
Sure. So as you had mentioned, Oak Street is it's a nationwide lending platform. We've been around since 2003. So we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And we are a subsidiary of First Financial Bank, which is about a $17 billion bank out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And the bank has owned us for about 8 years. Currently, we're a niche lender, and we do strictly insurance agencies. We lend to agencies around the country, MGAs, program administrators, and we also lend to the RIA space, which is advisors, or the CPA space as well. So everything we do is a cash flow based lending, and that's our specialty and what we finance. And we do loans from about $100,000 up to $50 million is our cap. And those loans can range from, a couple years up to 10 years maximum. And any type of commercial purpose, whether it be acquisition, partner buy-ins, debt consolidation, working capital, and things like that you would think of with these types of businesses.
Okay. And you mentioned something about, I believe the term used was cash flow funding, or did I get that wrong?
We specialize in lending to businesses that have their main collateral is cash flow or revenue that they generate through their their relationships with their clients. It's very relationship heavy businesses that we work with.
Okay. Terrific. And so I want to go personal for just a second, because when I was reading your bio, I did notice the fact that you went from legal counsel to president, and I thought we do have career transitioners listening, and I thought maybe if you just want to comment quickly on how that came to be, people might be interested.
Sure. So our CEO, who was the prior president, Rick Denon, he took over additional responsibilities at the bank, at First Financial Bank, on the commercial side. And so when he moved up in that position, he needed someone to backfill his role. And with my experience and my years here with Oak Street, he chose me to be his successor, which we'll be talking probably about succession later on today as well. And in that role, I've transitioned into handling the day-to-day operations, dealing with the people side, getting out and meeting with clients, going to conferences, seminars, speaking, and a variety of other things that I hadn't really been involved in, in my prior legal role, where I was looking at the documents and sometimes had to play the bad guy. So it's definitely a nice change, and I'm really enjoying the new role.
Yeah, I really loved that when I read that. And can you attribute it to any particular, skill or strength or aspect of what you were doing in your job to make that happen?
I think it came down to the fact that I really know the ins and outs of this business, and I live it every day. I just really enjoy working here, and I understand what's important and what's made this company tick. And being the fact that I've really been involved with the company since it was founded, and I work directly with Mr. Denon and the management team. So with my deep understanding of the industries that we were in, and just being around the people who a lot of them have been here close to or longer than I have, it was just a natural fit for me to step into that position.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's a nice story for people to hear. So I'd love to get into some of the financing that you do, and maybe to help listeners who may be looking for financing to kind of understand that process a little bit.
Sure.
Go ahead and just, what would someone who is kind of contemplating in their mind that they need financing need to show you to be able to get that?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, we're specific to a few industries, but I think there is one common theme when you're getting ready to borrow. And this can be for a variety of the commercial purposes that I mentioned, but it all starts with getting your house in order. Sometimes we work with closely held businesses. Maybe there's one or two owners, a handful, and it really comes down to getting everything together to present to your lender. We're going to have to make sure that we understand their financials for the past 3 years. So getting all that information together, along with the last 3 years of tax returns for the company, as well as the individual's tax returns, sometimes that takes people a while to gather it. And so, I think it's just really getting yourself in order. On our website, we've done a couple webinars on this with our underwriters actually speaking to it, but just getting those things in order, any contracts that you have out there, any other potential lending that you might have, just understanding your cash flows, where your revenue's coming from, taking a look at your clients that you have. Do you have any clients that might be a larger concentration of your book, whether you're a CPA, an advisor, an insurance agent, and just understanding the ins and outs of that. Because when you get into the thick of things with an underwriting department, those are the kind of questions they're going to ask. And if you don't know those answers readily or have that information at hand, it really it can cause delays, of course. And it also, makes a lender wonder, are they really serious about this? So I think it's just making sure you understand every aspect of your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, because we talk so much here about your relationship with money, and a lot of a relationship is getting to know the person or whatever you're in relationship with. And I don't know what you're finding. My personal finding is that people typically aren't that aware of what's going on, and they might get their P&Ls in order to do taxes, and they might look at their tax returns once a year, but they really aren't as connected and aware of their numbers and their financial situation as they really need to be. So what are you finding?
That is true of again, kind of going to the closely held companies. It's not uncommon to find that the individual is using the company as their piggy bank, and there really needs to be a separation of those personal assets and liabilities from the company and really understand, if they're paying themselves a salary or just distributing all of the revenue. It's those kind of things that we find that sometimes people don't have a good grasp on. And even if you ask their CPA that they use once a year, they might not be able to help them unless they're really connected and they actually go to that CPA for consulting. So it's definitely a hurdle sometimes for some of these individual entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, we talk a lot about being organized with your money and spending that time. And, with what you're saying, if you are typically on top of it, typically putting things together, looking at them, it's going to be a very quick process for you to go this route if you decide that you want to. And I think oftentimes, I mean, you can correct me on this one too, but is it usually that people run into an issue and then they go chase some financing, or are they planning ahead and know that they're going to need this because of their business plan?
The people that we deal with are, I'm going to say, at least what I see, what comes across my desk is people that are planning for the future. They're looking for an opportunity to grow, whether it be through acquisition of another company or bringing on a team or an agent, whether it's, just maybe buying a book of business, or it could even be to hire marketing or technology that they need to grow their business. So a lot of it centers around growth, and there's just so many options that people are just very creative nowadays, I think, with looking for the best way to grow their company without having to expend too many resources. And so, we see all types of requests for growth these days.
And as part of the decision making, is that a part of it? So if someone is wanting financing to add staff versus add technology, I mean, is there a difference in the way you look at that?
There is. When it comes to, say, someone that's going to add staff or looking at if they're going to make an acquisition, we're really looking at whether that purchase will be accretive. Is that really going to add volume to the business, add revenue, add EBITDA without adding a lot of overhead? So we look at the synergies, again, if it's an acquisition, where can the companies combine and say cut costs, cut overhead, cut office space, but yet they're picking up revenue in the big scheme of things. And so those are definitely questions that our underwriters ask. And we really, we want to get to know the person. We want to know, again, why they're doing it, what their ultimate goal is. Is this a one-time opportunity? Do they plan on doing this multiple times? Are they in hyper growth mode? And what we call kind of an aggregator in a variety of our spaces. And so we definitely get in there, and sometimes, depending on the loan size, we'll actually go out and meet our clients and have those face-to-face conversations with them on their plans. And we really want to get to know their team. And I'm sure you've talked about this as well, is if an owner doesn't have a succession plan in place or someone that can step in his or her shoes if something were to happen, or if they decide to step back, we really need to understand that aspect of their business as well. And a lot of times people don't think about why a lender would want to know about those kind of plans. So, and maybe that leads us to a different topic, but we look at all those different parts of the client's business.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great to lead into our next topic, because we did talk about succession planning. I'm having trouble saying that word. And it connects pretty well to something else that I've been talking to a lot lately, which is just planning in general, because of what I've been going through with my parents, who were, one day driving and living their life and the next day not. And just this idea of planning for something that could really throw your business or your life off. And if you are a business owner and you don't have people who can take over for you. I recently was talking to someone who works for a very large entertainment company, and the person who owns it, who's in charge, had a bad racing accident. And so, things happen. And so what would you say someone could do to start that plan? This is actually not even succession planning as much as it's just planning for an uneventful, sort of occurrence. But and then we can move into what you should do, even if things are going along and you just know that
I
at some
think,
point you
and
might
I
leave.
kind of think of that as more like contingency planning.
There you go. That's the word.
And it's incumbent upon any business owner. So, just even outside of the bounds of what we specialize in funding, I think it's any business owner needs to have those types of plans in place. Whether it be some sort of key man life insurance policy to cover themselves if something happens, if that company needs to bring on a new CEO or president to run the company, they'll have the money to do that. It can also cover any debt that's been incurred. So there's a couple aspects to that key man life insurance, making sure that there's someone that can step in the shoes of the person, like you said, maybe they got into a car accident or a racing accident or even had a heart attack, which we've seen a variety of different things occur in our 20 years. But you need someone that can actually step in and service your clients, because some of these industries, as you can imagine, are very personal. Mm-hmm. And so, if something happens to John and I'm like, oh, John's my CPA, I don't want to work with anyone else, or I don't know who else to call at the firm, then that's going to make me nervous and maybe look elsewhere. So, you really need to have people that know your clients, know your business, the financials, where things are located, someone that has authority to, access bank accounts, to write checks for payroll, or maybe get online and do that because no one's writing checks anymore. But just even those things that you would consider day-to-day operations, you really need someone that can step in. And unfortunately, as I've seen, sometimes that falls to a spouse. If the person isn't adequately prepared, then one day the spouse calls and said, so-and-so passed away, or so-and-so had a stroke, and I don't know what to do. And so then they're scrambling. And a lot of times that is the family's only source of income, or maybe they don't have any retirement because they put all their money into their business. And so that is a giant asset that you can just you don't want it to just go away overnight because of your failure to plan. So that's definitely a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, thank you. That was really well said. And it's a really important point. And I know entrepreneurs and even just regular professionals are busy. And so oftentimes you're just too busy to stop and set these things up, which is another indicator of how your relationship is, because any relationship needs attention and time spent on it. So, if you're not actually setting aside time on your calendar to work on these things, it just doesn't happen, even though you might agree that it's important. So, let's continue with the succession planning. I mean, how do people look at that? How far in advance should they plan? Because ultimately, if you want your business, as you were saying, to be a large asset for retirement, for example, then, it has to be an ongoing concern, and it has to have somebody ready to take over when you leave.
That it's something we preach every day. I think people don't think, retirement's so far off. It's another 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case might be. Especially now where you have the boomer generation, which I think their approximate age is like 59 to 77. You have a lot of people in that category that maybe they're spry and they're out riding their bikes and, playing sports and doing this and that. But I'd say 5 years, if you're thinking of retiring in, say, the next 5 years, and you don't have a succession plan in place, and you're maybe the sole owner or one or two owners, then you're already behind the 8 ball. So, I think it's important for people to really just take a look, and, there's CPAs, there's attorneys, even your RIA, that can help you get that type of plan together. And it's very simple. If you, like you said, you sit down and you actually make time for it. But it's sometimes I think it's too personal. People don't want to think about their own retirement or if something would happen to them, especially if they are the sole founder and the company has been their baby for 20, 30 years, maybe more. And thinking about, really putting their thumb on the pulse of where is the business stand today? Do I need to grow? If I need to grow, do I want to invest in the next 5 years before I sell? So maybe I can maximize, the return on my investment. Have they talked to people about maybe wanting to step up into management roles, to take over someday? It's interesting, the conversations that we have with folks that say, oh, I have a succession plan. And we ask who it is or what the details are. And they say, oh, it's so-and-so that works in my office. Have you talked to them? Well, they kind of know it's them. And they've never really sat down, unfortunately, and had that conversation with the person or persons that they actually want to take over their business someday. So it's even something as simple as that, is clear communications. And just thinking about the role that that person wants to play as they move forward. Do they want to exit and not work anymore? Do they want to kind of step back and let so-and-so, take over as a president or operations for a couple of years and work part-time while they transition parts of the business? Those are all things that people need to think about. And I just think sometimes it makes people kind of nervous to even have to think about it. But it is so important when you're talking about a business that is basically your sole asset when you retire or when you leave to your spouse.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I find everything comes down to communication at some point. So it is amazing the assumptions we make. As you were describing that, I'm thinking, wow, that person may have absolutely no interest in that at all. So, yeah, very interesting. And, of course, some of the service-based businesses you were talking about, whether it's a CPA practice or a medical practice or whatever, those to me have kind of an obvious answer, which is if you can get some, an associate or a couple of associates working with you for the last, 10 years or whatever, and sort of getting them ready for that, they may very well plan along with you to buy you out, for example. But do you typically see that somebody is interested in selling their business, or how does this usually go?
So there's a couple options. I think right now it's the big question people have is, do I want to sell externally to someone I don't know, someone that's, in the industry, maybe a competitor that is looking to grow, or do I do it internally? Do I, like you said, do I sell to some of the associates that have been working with the company for the last 5-10 years? Some of the associates may even have sweat equity. You may have given them some unofficial shares of the business as they've worked so hard to keep them engaged. And so that is definitely an ongoing conversation. What we've been seeing a lot lately is internal succession. There really is a desire on the part of the founder or entrepreneur, whatever you want to call them, working with the next generation to take over the business. And it really comes down to a question of when, how, and how this next generation of associates is going to finance that buy-in. So for example, there could be a founder and 5 associates, and they want to sell over the next 5 years. So they could maybe sell 20% next year, 20% the year after, and they could kind of stage that succession. And over that 5-year period, the individual associates would come to, say, Oak Street, for example, to take out a loan to finance their buy-in of that practice, the CPA firm, for example, or the advisory firm. And so it's things like that, even allowing this next generation to get their finances in order so that they can monetize, pay you out, and you can see all your hard work pay off in the end.
Yeah, interesting. And someone like you or people at your company can help people to create a plan, I'm assuming, because some of this, I think, would be something where you really do need to sit down and discuss these ideas with somebody maybe who can see things outside of, your own viewpoint. Because that's a great idea that, people may or may not be thinking about.
Yeah, it kind of comes in all shapes and forms. We see some people come to us and they have a clear plan. They have the agreements already drafted, and it's drawn out for the next 5 years. But we do see folks that come to us and say, what are you seeing in the market? How do I go about doing this? Does this seem like it would cash flow? Are there things I need to do to get my house in order before I take the next step of selling parts of my business off to the next generation? And so we see all sorts of types. And my salespeople, I talked to them at a conference I was at last week, and every call they get is different. Everyone's in different stages. But what we don't like to see is the last minute, someone that has not planned and something's gone wrong and they are desperate to sell. And then that obviously causes them to have to take a haircut, or, maybe they're not going to get as much as they want for their practice because they haven't planned and they're kind of in a rush and they just need to sell it today. So it just really pays to get your ducks in a row and seek out the proper legal guidance and tax guidance, because that's the other aspect. Depending on how you sell your practice or your interest in it, there could be different tax implications. And I'm not a tax expert, but I know that there are definitely some tax implications that come into play depending on the type of sale and when you get the money and different tax years. So definitely something to look out for when you're trying to maximize the amount of money you get.
Yeah, great point. That can result in some unexpected issues. We had one ourselves selling a business that we should have handled it a little differently. Probably had hoped the broker would have told us these things, but didn't, and ended up paying a lot of taxes that we could have avoided. But live and learn.
Yeah. There are brokers that specialize in a lot of these industries, the ones in particular that we lend to, and that they have a good reputation. And you need references. Get references, make sure that they really know what they're talking about and they really understand your business and are able to connect you with people that can advise you on those specifics, whether it be taxes or any other personnel aspects or what have you. Those are all just, it's worth the money. The little bit of extra money that you might spend in the grand scheme of things, it's going to make a huge difference and ultimately will save you money in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking, when people do plan, like you're suggesting they should, what are there some tips for how to operate in your business with that plan in terms of other people knowing about the plan, or, I know in some cases people, especially if they want to sell externally, kind of have to keep it a bit of a secret. But any thoughts or ideas on that?
I just with my personal experience here at Oak Street, my plan or my thought on that is to be completely honest, to be transparent. Before the bank bought us, we had gone through being owned by 3 different private equity firms. And each time that the company was sold, our founder, Mr. Denon, was 100% transparent, wanted every employee to know what was going on as much as he possibly could. And I think that if the more open communication you have, the better. It's if it's written out. I know it seems so simplistic, but writing things out and sitting down with people and talking them through that transition is going to be the easiest way for everyone, because then everyone knows what's going on. They have comfort that once, and I just keep using this generic name, but once John steps back, these 5 individuals are going to step up and manage the company. And now they know that they do have a long-term viable company and your job is secure. The staff need to know that. Otherwise, you risk people leaving because they're like, well, so-and-so didn't talk to me about their succession. Maybe they're going to retire. Maybe they're going to sell externally. Maybe they're going to, not be around. And so people may start looking elsewhere. They may get uncomfortable. And so I think for a variety of reasons, it's best to just be transparent with everyone.
Okay. Yeah, great. Let's talk about the business as an asset and as a retirement asset. You mentioned that, it can be a person's sole asset, but that's not the most desirable stance, really.
No, it's not. It's it, I guess I'm not surprised anymore, but it was surprising to me at first when you see someone's personal financial statement and it lists all their assets and liabilities and their 401k. You look at that line and it says, for example, they have $250,000 and maybe they're 65 years old and you think, oh, I have more in my retirement than that. But then you look at their other line and it says they value their business at $10 million. So the question that we always have is, how are you going to monetize that? And that, again, that's when you get into the discussion of you've worked your whole life, 30 years, building this business. Every dime you make goes back into this business. You've been self-funding all these years. You've sacrificed your 401k, probably other family, time, vacations, maybe other things that you wanted to do, go on trips. So how are you going to make this work for yourself and your family? We have unfortunately seen circumstances where the individual has not planned and something happens to them in one of these service businesses and they pass away and the spouse is struggling with the estate, trying to figure out, do I sell it? Can I sell it? And in the meantime, all the clients are walking away. And at the end of the day, the estate really has nothing left and the spouse has nothing left. The family has nothing left. And so no one should be in that situation. And it's just so important for these types of businesses that they have something in place so that, they can talk to their family about, when I retire or when I step back and let so-and-so take over, here's how we're going to realize all this work that we put into this business for the last 20, 30 years. And that, a $200,000 401k plan is not all that you're left with or all that your family's left with. So it's all about just planning ahead and making sure that you that you're not left scrambling at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's not the way you described that. I don't think that's an uncommon scenario. I think a lot of people do put their heart and soul into their business. They consider that their main asset that they will ultimately retire on. And as you said, often people do forego their other retirement accounts or whatever because they need the cash for their business or whatever it is, or they feel they do. I would advise, I'm not an advisor, but I would suggest that people continue to fund their regular retirement accounts, even as they start up a new business. Once you let something like that go, this is my own personal, again, experience, but once you stop doing one of these things and you get out of the habit and you're telling yourself, after a year, I'll jump back in, doesn't always happen the way you plan, I guess. Maybe it's not a solid enough plan. But it is easy to get derailed. So I'm a big believer at this late date to just get in the habit and stick to a habit. Any suggestions?
I think that's where people need to take a step back and separate themselves from the business and really, think about it like you would any other job. Here's my income. Here's my annual salary. And I'm going to take X percent and put it in my 401k and maximize my 401k every year. So not just treat it as one with the business, putting all your money in, taking the money out. Again, just making that separation of church and state and treating it just as you would as you were getting a paycheck every other week and having money go directly into your retirement account or other type of savings or whatever your retirement aspect may be, whatever vehicle you choose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thank you. I agree. And it's not easy. It does take some discipline to be able to do that separating. But it is super important. And it's really interesting how you just sort of naturally, stop doing that as a business owner. So it's much easier to go that route than to keep the discipline and do what you need to do. But I think, again, if you're looking at it, into the future with the vision that there's no one investment out there that should be your sole retirement. So what else would you say to people about that? And do you look at that when you're looking to fund people? Do you look and see if you have a very low 401k and a highly valued business, is that part, do you consider that at all?
I find it interesting, but that's not the sole focus or not a big focus of our underwriting team. They're gonna look at the person as an overall. So they'll look at the business aspect and all the cash flow with that, but they'll also look at the individual, the owner or owners, and take a look at their personal financial statement in terms of are they over leveraged? I think, if someone is living outside of their means, that is definitely a red flag, because that indicates that perhaps that person is not responsible with their finances overall, which bleeds into the business. So that definitely is something that we take a look at. And if you have someone that, for example, has tax liens, or you pull up their information from the IRS and it shows that they haven't paid taxes in 3-4 years, I mean, that's going to be a red flag for sure. So, it kind of goes back to getting your house in order. If you haven't been keeping your taxes current, or you have other liens or judgments out there due to your personal failure to pay attention to your personal finances, that is definitely something that we're going to take a hard look at and see whether it was just a one-time blip, or if it's something that is a indicator that the person is not good with finances, which bleeds into their business.
Yeah. Okay. And when you talk about being over leveraged, is there some metric or, some way for people to quickly evaluate that in their heads?
I think it boils down to, especially in these kind of closely held corporations or companies, is whether they have sufficient cash flow from the company to not only finance and grow the company, but to pay their personal cash flow, if that's their only source of income. If they don't have a spouse or a spouse that makes income, it's really looking at it as one picture and seeing whether they have enough coming in from the business to support everything. And if they don't, if they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, or, they have 2 or 3 lines of credit on their house, that might be an indicator that they're not looking at their global cash flow and being responsible with their debt. Okay.
Yeah. And so I think we can picture kind of the negative aspects in what could look like a not so great picture. Can you maybe share a story of, something that has has looked a lot better than that?
No, of course, I think it's the attorney in me that looks at the negative side so much.
I think I was asking you questions that led that way, so don't put that one on you, but yeah.
We do see a lot of successful stories in terms of acquisitions that, somebody's retiring and they want to sell their business to the competitor or to their second generation. And whether it's a lump sum or whether it's over time, and they've gotten that relationship in order. They've gotten generation 2 or the associates they work with. They've had those conversations up front with, I really enjoy working with you. The clients enjoy working with you. I trust you with the future of my business. I trust you with the employees that you work with, and they make it happen. And it's what's neat to me is to see, for example, we have a client, we have a couple, but a client that purchased a couple different insurance businesses over a 5-year period, and then they ended up selling to a larger public company for 100 million plus. We love seeing those stories, and we love helping the everyday entrepreneur that is just looking to pass the business on to the next generation. And if they do it right, and they could get in the RIA space, the advisor space, what we're seeing is they might get a 7 to 8 times multiple on their EBITDA, and so they're getting a really good return for their investment that they've made over the last 20-30 years. And that's the stuff we really like doing. Those are the people we really like talking to, and it gives you the warm and fuzzies and makes it all worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's great. That's that's definitely fun to hear about. Can you comment just briefly on the EBITDA piece? Because I think a lot of times, more seasoned founders maybe not, but for some people, they're so focused on revenue and less so on the EBITDA. So if you can just talk about that for just a minute.
Sure. And I'll say what it stands for, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization.
Yeah.
And so, what our underwriting team is going to look at is the leverage essentially that the business is operating at. If they take out a loan with us and, it's going to get them, their leverage is up above 4 times that amount of EBITDA, it's getting a little heavy, and that business might not be able to cash flow that loan going forward. And so that is definitely something that we're going to take into account when adding in that amortization to the rest of the cash flow of the company.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. It's important for people to know, what numbers to be focused on, I think. So, okay. Well, Alicia, any other, kind of end of show tips with respect to planning, succession planning, or, just how you should sort of pay attention to your business as you're looking toward the future?
I think, again, I'm going back to my attorney brain. You need to document everything. It's something as simple as when we ask someone, give us your organization documents for the company, and they can't find their articles, or they can't find their bylaws or their operating agreement, or maybe it's not been updated in 20 years. To me, it's all about documentation, being prepared, and there's nothing wrong with spending a little bit extra money to have an attorney do it right, to have a CPA help you or consult with you regarding your taxes or whatever your opportunity may be, and how that might affect your income or your revenue, and just really talk to and be open with your staff and your family, right? Because they're going to have a big say, and they probably have been a big part of your business all these years. And so it's about having that constant and open communication, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and seek the advice that you need. And there are people out there like Oak Street that are happy to help you realize your dreams and to monetize your business. Like I said, if it's insurance, the advisor space, the CPA space, and really seek out those kind of specialty lenders that have the knowledge of your industry and that can really understand your business as you walk through with them, and try to make probably one of the biggest decisions of your life.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And I do so love the advice to talk to people and ask questions. And I feel like people are often just afraid to do that, or they just feel like they're going to look silly or whatever it is. I think it's so important to do that and educate yourself. And so, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. You're a wealth of information. I hope people will feel comfortable reaching out to you for answers, or not necessarily you, but your company, sorry. But yeah, I really appreciate all the insight. It's great information and really important stuff. And I know it may not seem so important now, but if you reach a point where it becomes important, you will benefit so much by having done this. So yeah, thank you. And do you want to tell people how they can reach out to you? I know your website's up there, but any specifics on that?
Sure. You can locate me on the website. You can also, on the website, it will have my email and my personal cell phone and all my information. So feel free to email me. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Alicia.Chandler@oakstreetfunding.com. And I'm happy to send you to one of my other teammates. I have plenty of colleagues with plenty of information, lenders, underwriters, you name it, in-house counsel, paralegals. So we service our loans from start to finish, and we're happy to have those conversations.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for being here. It was great to
No
talk
problem.
to you. And Yeah, I look forward to people listening to the show, and maybe the light bulbs will go off about financing their own ideas or their own businesses. And listeners, thank you for being here. We love having you here at the Money and You Show. And if you like the show, please give us a like, give us a review. We'd love that. You can reach out to me at Michelle, 2Ls at limitfreelife.com. And, a lot of what we talked about requires that you go on these money dates that I talk about a lot. So spend that time with your money, getting organized, getting to know what's going on. You want to know what your position is. Are you even, potentially eligible for the financing that you would need to do whatever that business plan has you going for? So think about the future, plan, and listen to the show. We're here every Monday, broadcast from ubngo.com, and then on all the podcast platforms after that. So look forward to seeing you. See you next week.